Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Horrocks. I'm chair of SEMLEP, the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership. Welcome to this event, 3 hours this morning, to discuss the future of aerospace and in particular, the role that businesses, universities and innovation-focused organisations in our part of the country can play in the future of aviation, particularly in relation to sustainability, but all aspects of innovation in relation to the aerospace industry. I'm not an expert in aerospace. My role as chair of the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership is to help bring businesses, the public authorities, universities, all those who care about the economic well-being of our area together to enable us to develop ideas, networks and relationships, and also to help attract public funding to enable business and society in our area to prosper. As I say, I don't have expertise in aerospace, but it's an industry, it's a sector that I'm fascinated by, and I'm very aware of the wonderful history and the heritage of aerospace in our part of the world. In fact, I was rather forcibly and physically reminded of that this weekend. I had a 3-day cycling holiday going from Bedfordshire through Buckinghamshire into Oxfordshire, then into Gloucestershire. And I kept coming across these air bases, old air bases or current air bases. And whenever you run across one, you're aware of just what a physical presence they are. You know, so cycling in the wind and rain around those, I was forcibly reminded of that this very weekend. But of course, what we're focusing on here is the future of aerospace. And what we've put together through our agenda today is an opportunity for people to understand some of the innovation that's happening from this area, an opportunity for businesses and innovators to be able to have updates from a number of organizations. It really is an opportunity for networking, for people to be able to exchange details and to be able to enhance their business and innovation networking credentials. And then in the second half of the morning, we'll be moving on to a discussion that's going to be facilitated by the ARC Universities Group, which is the group of all of the universities across the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, to be able to understand some of the innovation funding, some of the research possibilities and existing research efforts. And we'll have briefing on those opportunities in the course of that event, of that part of the event. I'll just say a little bit more about the overall status of the Oxford-Cambridge ARC project and the relationship of the local enterprise partnership to that. The government in February of this year stated a very strong vision for the Oxford-Cambridge ARC. It's based on high levels of innovation and increased levels of productivity alongside a commitment to environmental sustainability. And it was quite striking that the ambition was stated in that dual way for the Oxford-Cambridge area to become one of the leading growth corridors in the world. So setting a fantastically high ambition in terms of the level of innovation and productivity that's required and hoped for of our part of the world, but doing that alongside a commitment to environmental sustainability. So not just development for its own sake, not concreting over the country, but a commitment to make sure that nature is invested in. And of course, in our focus this morning on sustainable aviation, we'll be thinking about how we can do those two things together, how the businesses that are represented in the event this morning can prosper, how you can grow, how more jobs can be created, but how it can be done in a way that aims towards net zero carbon, and that ensures that all aspects of the supply chain are done in a way that is fully sustainable. So a really exciting but immensely intellectually challenging dual purpose for the ARC as a whole, for the central part of it, which is the South East Midlands, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes, the particular responsibility that SEMLEP has, but a really exciting dual challenge that we face. We have fantastic assets, aviation and aerospace assets already in our part of the world. We have Luton Airport, the 5th largest airport in the country. We have Cranfield University with its proud heritage of as a base for aviation, you know, the only university with its own landing strip. And we also have a range of other assets. I think of Silverstone and its advanced manufacturing and engineering. And I think one of the things that we're very aware of is the increased interrelationship between different sectors. So capabilities that have grown out of the motorsports industry in relation to materials, in relation to additive manufacturing, using AI and advanced engineering techniques in the motorsports sector, absolutely, and already being highly applied to aviation. So that cross-fertilization between different areas of industrial expertise and the development of much more versatile, much more flexible and innovative research supply chain, research-related supply chain. That's our theme for the morning. So we've got a number of presentations to get things going, and in a minute, then I'll introduce our panel after we've had some initial comments. As usual with these virtual events, if you can keep your microphones on mute, as I know I can hear that everyone already is, and it can help some people who have limited bandwidth if people keep their cameras off, but that's not a requirement. So the first comments and explanation of their involvement in today is going to come from Hitendra Hirani from the University of Nottingham. The University of Nottingham's got a particular role in terms of funding and supporting innovation within aerospace, innovation funding for businesses. So Hitendra, can I hand over to you to do your introduction before we start to move into some more presentations, and then we come to our panel. Thanks very much.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction and setting for the day. I'm just going to take you through some of the things we're going to be talking about today, and also some background as to where this project has come from and why we're doing this. And that will give you a feel for some of the funding that's out there, which my colleagues will go into later on in the day. So hopefully you can see my screen now. So as an introduction to the day, why we are here and what we're doing. So I work for the Institute for Aerospace Technology at the University of Nottingham. Back in 2008, the university for the first time did a proper review into research that we're doing. And it turns out that we've been doing research in aerospace back until the 1950s, but we weren't really recognized for it. It was happening in pockets. There were pockets of excellence and more than 50 people doing research and more than 300 researchers that are in that kind of field. But there wasn't an institute that was actually presenting that back, working with industry and designed to actually take that kind of low TRL research and package it up and work with larger companies. So there was a need to integrate, develop and promote that portfolio. And that's what my team do at the university. And you'll come across Lisa later in the day and Joe, who are part of that team. And this is really where the seeds of this aerospace unlocking potential started to come together. We've been doing ERDF projects back since when we were founded. Back in 2009 was our first ERDF project, where we were rolling out a lot of these kinds of support to SMEs in D2N2, where we're located. But what we weren't able to do was actually to roll that out further. And as we've been developing and doing work, more and more work with the Midlands Aerospace Alliance, we saw that as an opportunity to then expand the kind of work we're doing, integrate the kind of work that the Midlands Aerospace Alliance have been doing, and really roll out something that's special. And industry doesn't operate on specific localities. They operate globally. Is there something we can do? At least expanding into the Midlands as a start, and this project and this meeting is a welcome step in doing that. just to give you a kind of feel for some of the kind of things we do, we work quite nicely with Cranfield, and I'm sure Ian Gray will also touch upon the UK Aerospace Research Consortium, which Nottingham and Cranfield initially sowed the seeds for back in 2015, and we've been working together for a while to make that happen. And this year we were able to get a EPSRC network grant to really kind of accelerate that program along with the kind of 11 big aerospace universities. And our role in that kind of space, we've been doing a lot of work with electric motors, with electric drives, with manufacturing, and a couple of examples you see here. On the left is our ATI-funded 3-shaft test facility, where we can actually do lots of engine tests, gearbox tests on a 3-shaft kind of setup. It's the only kind of rig that there is of its kind in the UK that's available for external use. So we're quite thrilled to be hosting that facility, and it's a national facility that people can come in and use. On the right, you see a automated aircraft assembly demonstrator, and really, the future of manufacturing in this country, I'm sure a lot of you would know, is we are a high labor cost country. There is a lot of work and a lot of buzz around Industry 4.0 and human machine interaction and getting more informatics into manufacturing. And that program is all about putting together some demonstrators and working with industry to define the really intricate kind of processes that we have in aerospace that need quality control, that need to have repeatability, that need to have reliability, and make use of humans and machines. We're talking about things like sealing, gluing, riveting. Can we do that in a more intelligent and more automated way? And can we use the digital technologies in a smart way to deliver those kinds of things? And those are really kind of headline projects that we've been doing. I show you some kind of interesting results. The other kind of key trend to go alongside the manufacturing and greening of aviation is around electrification. On the left, you see that is a project we've been doing with a company in Rochdale. We've been developing a motor generator unit for Safran helicopter engines. The unit that you see in the picture is actually designed to fit on the shaft of an aero engine. So it's in a place there's lots of vibrations, heat, lots of challenges, and this is about to go out on a test rig in the south of France, and it's an export opportunity for this company. And it's those kinds of opportunities we want to make possible for some of the companies that are in this call today. On the right, that picture was actually taken on the day that Rolls-Royce acquired Siemens. The machine that you see me standing next to is a 4-megawatt aircraft generator. Nobody else in the world has done this. We did this with Siemens, which was then acquired by Rolls-Royce and is now Rolls-Royce Electrical. That was a kind of demonstrator unit where we demonstrated that technology. And it's really a kind of game changer to be able to pack that amount of power, and you see the size of that kind of unit that's there. It takes something really special, and we've been doing those kinds of things. Another thing that we've been very good at engaging with, the graphic on the bottom shows the Clean Sky 2 program, which is the largest European program in aerospace, and there are motions being put in place at the moment for the European Partnership for Clean Aviation, which is a successor to this. On the top right, you see the top 10 of UK beneficiaries in that program, and you can see the scale of our involvement in that. On the bottom of that, you see a kind of infographic with a number of acronyms on it. And those kinds of acronyms, each of those is a project. You can see we're quite immersed within the program, and a lot of the kind of projects we've been doing here, we've brought UK companies into the program to actually be able to expose them to larger people in the supply chain, and it's been a really good success story in terms of doing that. So, again, the aerospace industry is very integrated, and what we want to do is give that kind of opportunity to more companies, develop those relationships, because that's where the growth is happening. The growth is happening in the supply chain, and how can we better support it? A couple of things that are sort of available and happening right now. We've just opened, and you may have seen a press release around the UK Electric Aircraft Propulsion Facility, which was funded out of the government's COVID Recovery Fund around the Get Building Fund. We're thrilled to be making that available, and that should be live in January. So there's going to be a lot of test rigs going in there for aircraft electrification, reducing pollution from aircraft, demonstrating electric motors, drives, hybrid propulsion, integration with hydrogen, and those kinds of things that we've been talking about. We've been doing a lot of research in these areas for quite a while, but this is the first time we're actually going to be hosting test facilities. Previously, we'd had to go out and do tests elsewhere in Europe, but now we're actually being able to do that here. The other thing along the bottom is the Driving Electric Revolution. There is an Industry Strategy Challenge Fund. There's a National Industrialization Center, which is integrating a lot of the power electronics, machines and drives expertise that there is in the country. There's 30 partners involved in it, and it's got a number of regional hubs. One in the northeast around Newcastle, which is focusing on scale up. In Scotland, around Strathclyde, and the AFRC, where they're really focusing on sort of high power. In the Midlands, we're co-hosting with Warwick on motors and drives technology, and in the Southwest, around the compound semiconductors catapults, they're really focusing on scale up of devices. So, we're trying to bring together that whole supply chain around electrification. And if you're interested in those kinds of things, please make use of the opportunity and let us know, and we'll try and help you be part of that. So why aerospace unlocking potential? The previous few slides, I presented some of the expertise that we've had. None of this is possible without partners in the supply chain. None of this is possible without working collaboratively with people. And understanding the sector needs. And the MAA has been working for a number of years on this. We know the sector requires support to deal with some of the challenges of the 21st century. As we talk about zero carbon, as we talk about greening, as we talk about digitalization, as we talk about additive, all those kinds of things are expertise that we've got within the university. Organizations like the MAA have a really thorough understanding of the supply chain and the sector needs, and speak with businesses on a daily basis. Can we package that together? Can we make use of our respective strengths and work together to deliver the business, the support that businesses need across the Midlands? And that's what we're trying to do with this program. And I hope that people that are involved in this call today, and people that listen to the recording and view the recording as it becomes available, are able to take advantage and make use of the program. So what is the program? In a sort of aerospace up on one slide, on the right, you see a map of the UK. You see the geography that we're covering in the program. SEMLEP is number 7 on that map that you see. What we've got is quite a large geography. We're able to offer things like workshops and dissemination events to help those companies become part of that innovation ecosystem that I've been talking about this morning. We also offer a number of consultancy services where experts from the MAA will go and actually talk to companies and try to understand innovation needs and make then plans to be able to satisfy those needs. We also offer technical support projects we've got a number of manufacturing facilities inside the Precision Manufacturing Center at the university, and those are available. We have technicians on hand, we've got engineers on hand who will actually help with prototyping parts, running different processes. We can do things like different machining, different types of some additive processes as well as part of that. And, you know, can we actually make products, and can we understand why some products are actually failing, and those kinds of things. You know, that's what those technical support projects do. And of course, we've got a very large sort of grant funding portfolio, which is available across the LEPs, and we really thank the SEMLEP for support and for making this program available to participants within this geography. So it's really a groundbreaking program, which we don't think has happened before. It's the largest revenue only ERDF project in the country, and we're really proud to be hosting it with the MAA and with support from the LEPs that are part of it. And hopefully we continue and we deliver on that, and we help the businesses. That's the most important thing on this. So if you want to learn more, you can contact me, you can contact Lisa, Joe, Pam, Pamela, Andrew Mayer, who are all on this call. You've got my email address here, and for further details of the program, you know, there is a website where people can click through and find out more. So that was my sort of welcome to the day this morning, why we're doing it. I now hand over to the next speaker, who John Rawcliffe, who will take you through the first session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hitendra. It's actually Peter picking up again now. But thank you very much for that excellent first presentation. As you said at the end there, building on the information that you've provided and the opportunity for people to ask more questions is the real purpose of the day. So obviously you've given us your email there, but there are two further ways in the course of the morning that if people want to find out more about what Hitendra's been explaining, his colleague Lisa Brewer will be appearing on the panel in a few minutes' time. But also throughout the morning, can I encourage everyone to please use the chat if there's something to do with the funding program that Hitendra explained, or specific innovations, you know, businesses that might have received support that you'd like to know more about. Do put information and questions into the chat, and Hitendra and his colleagues will answer them through the chat as well. And Karen's just asked a question about whether the presentation will be shared. Hitendra, you're happy for that to be shared afterwards? Good. I think we should ensure that all the presentations are shared. This is absolutely a morning that is about knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer. So in a little while, we're going to have a panel of both aerospace and business advice experts, people who've been supporting a number of businesses in this sector already. But first, what we're going to do is to hear from a couple of those businesses about the ways that they've been innovating and the ways that they've been accessing support. So first of all, we're going to hear from Edward from HeroTech 8 and then David from PAK Engineering. So if I can hand first to Edward, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then explain to everyone the kind of innovation that you've been involved in. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Edward Anastaskis. I'm the CEO of HeroTech 8. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Sorry, just bear with me one moment. I think I need access for me to share the screen. Is that right? Oh, I've got it. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, we can.
Perfect. So HeroTech 8. HeroTech 8 is a robotics startup. It's based and it was sort of founded at Cranfield University. However, we have offices both at Cranfield here in the UK as well as Berkeley in California. And we build automated drone station technologies. So it's actually conceptually very straightforward to visualize. An automated drone station is a landing base for drones to effectively be automatically deployed, recovered, recharged without the need for on-site human intervention. Now, something interesting about our technology, we build with Cranfield, we've built our own sort of proprietary landing systems. This allows us to land incredibly accurately on our platforms. It allows us to do it repeatedly, despite, for example, operating in quite tough British weather. For example, we can fly in fairly windy conditions, through the rain and fog. We don't need to see the landing pad to do this recovery. We also leverage a lot of the IoT technologies that exist today. So we effectively network a lot of our systems together to have them work in teams in order to address some of the larger infrastructure challenges, the inspection, the continuous monitoring applications as well. And really, there's two key applications here that our technology is used for. The first is quite clearly security and surveillance. A lot of our systems are used primarily to provide a level of automated security around an installation. So examples of some use cases are perimeter patrolling. You have a large facility, a large power plant, for example, and instead of sending guards to effectively patrol kilometers of said perimeter, you send the drone, it automatically flies along this, comes back, lands, recharges, and the operator can be in a control room really many, many miles away. It also allows you to do automated alarm responses, and through some special computer vision work, we can also detect, I guess, different behaviors. It can detect vehicles and personnel on the ground. The second application, which is increasingly becoming the most important sort of application, is around facility management, things like asset inspection, things like routine rooftop inspections. We see our systems being used increasingly on energy infrastructure, things like wind turbines and substations as well. And part of this, very, very similar to the security context, our systems are used for routine site monitoring. So someone clicks a button, the drone takes off, flies alongside that infrastructure, capturing data, coming back, landing. And the operator does not actually need to worry about the flying, he just needs to worry about the data that has been captured. So this is a little bit about how our technology looks. You have the ADS, the Automated Drone Station, on the left. And we take third-party drone systems and we integrate that into our technology. We don't feel the need to build our own aircraft. Lots of companies build drones today. We simply take the best of what the market has to offer and we integrate that into our systems. Now, regarding the sort of wider IoT piece, we actually open our system to the cloud, depending on which customer wants to use it. You see a lot of customers, for example, using the systems entirely remotely. We have systems in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia. All of these systems are operated effectively and securely through the internet to capture data and then store all of that data into effectively our local data storage modules. Again, everything can be operated remotely. This isn't something that is 5 years away. This really is something today, and we built all of this technology with the help of Cranfield University. So just a little bit about our relationship with Cranfield. Cranfield was in fact our first shareholder. We were not a spin out in the traditional sense. Cranfield doesn't have a large shareholdings in the company. However, Cranfield was the first investor. They helped support us with financing of our intellectual property. So our first patent was in fact, or was part funded by Cranfield. This really helped us fund and move sort of the initial R&D work around this sort of exploration of the technology. And it was really key in effectively the formulation of the company as a whole. It sort of, Cranfield have helped us sort of focus our efforts where we think there is a real technology and commercial gap. Cranfield also provides us with a sort of an ideal test bed for this kind of technology. There aren't many other places in the UK where you can build sort of our tech within the context of the wider future aviation systems that is being developed around the developed as part of things like future flight. Cranfield really provides us with that sort of test infrastructure with their digital air traffic control. They're the only airport with this kind of capability to test. They are sort of a very early adopter of our technology as well. Cranfield own a small number of these systems as well, and really through Cranfield, we're in a very important innovation network with access to things like Innovate UK funding. There's a huge R&D appetite. We work very closely with the academics there in order to push the needle on our end. But Cranfield also, because it's a university, you have a lot of blue skies thinking. We really treat Cranfield as a sort of talent pool. We bring on Cranfield students, MSc students, and PhD students. We also fund Cranfield PhDs. We look to it to sort of bring on every year sort of great capability into the company. So some of the work, I mean, a lot of the work that we do with Cranfield today is really around the collaborative R&D. So a lot of our work today through Future Flight, it's been, I think, pushed around in the news recently around medical deliveries through the use of our drone systems. But it goes really beyond that, and we've been picked up in the news in places like France, where we also are now operating. We've deployed systems, we've flown and landed on sort of small boats to deliver medical payloads. All of this work, really, we wouldn't have been able to do this without the initial support of Cranfield University. And just to reiterate, we're also receiving sustained support. That's great as well. It's not just a initial support and then dump in the future. We've been working side by side, and we expect to do so for a long time. And that's it from me. Any sort of questions that you'd like to fire over, either put it in the chat or send it over to my email address. It's up there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edward. That was absolutely fascinating and amazing the way that can be done remotely in so many different locations. And I thought the way you described the relationship with the university and that innovation ecosystem, absolutely central to what we're talking about this morning. Our second technology and innovation presentation is from David from PAK Engineering. David.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Slightly quiet, just speak up a little. A little bit better, yeah. Get that mic as close as you can to your face, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to just check my settings in a moment.
No, it's come through better now. It's
come through better. Okay, I'll just share my screen with you now. Wonderful. So the screen share. Okay, I'm going to keep this fairly simple for everyone, as the innovation which we're looking at developing with aerospace up is still in its initial phase, so shouldn't take too long. Just to explain a bit about who PAK Engineering are and our current engagement with aerospace up and where we're up to date. So PAK Engineering are essentially a prototype manufacturer, and we're based up in Tamworth, which is smack in the middle of the country. If any of you have ever driven down the M42 or along the A5, it's basically just where they cross. We're based there and in the industrial estate. We work both in traditional manufacturing of various systems, and but ultimately we manufacture any types of prototypes associated with HVAC systems primarily, but we work across multiple industries from aerospace and the automotive sector, the building sector across the board. So I've originally come from the building sector itself, and anything associated with energy systems as well, because our main area is in the heat exchangers primarily. So we also work in R&D project development. So we write our own proposals and we develop our own ideas based upon existing projects which we've worked on. And we also work in R&D project management, so we deliver at the same time. Now, the company was originally formed off an idea which my MD designed himself, which is of thinned tube heat exchanger technology. He invented the process which is utilized to manufacture these types of systems here. And again, these are used across multiple different applications. I won't go into major details now. Just to give you some examples here, with they're using these types of turbulators here, but they also go in spaces where a certain amount of heat is reduction or extraction is required for certain processes. High performance cars would be your atypical example. Some unique selling points about us: we're small and adaptable, so we can get stuff done pretty quick if you need it, and we also say yes. Generally, our customer base comes to us when they've been to other manufacturers that have asked them to make something. There's usually nothing in there for them because they don't have the right skills, they don't have the right process, there's not enough money to be made in it. So they come to us, we say, yeah, we can do that for you, and we get it turned around pretty quick. Normally what happens is once we produce something to the quality which we do produce, they come back to us and say, right, great, do us 20 more, 50 more, 100 more, etc. That's how it essentially works. In the last 5 years, we've expanded out into additive manufacturing, so the 3D printing technology. So we developed a good basis of that as well. So we can do this works quite well with our prototyping technologies that we've done. So this has got us working with multiple universities across the region, from Birmingham, Nottingham, Loughborough, etc. You name it. We've usually worked with one or two of them on various projects, directly or indirectly. Give you an idea about some of our customer base. We're international. We do all over the world. So it's a well established, around 20 years. So what were we looking for with Aerospace Up? Well, to explain this story, there's a kind of a history to how the current setup that we've got in pack engineering came around. So the company was originally formed in 2002. Now, the way I've come to explain this story is a red line and a green line. The red line being the practical timeline, and the green line being the theoretical timeline. So what are those? Well, the practical timeline, the bulk of the company, the main expertise of the actual director and all the engineers that he has in the factory is a kind of the practical scale. It's understanding what materials work, how you can manufacture them, what tools you can utilize to manufacture certain products. So it's essentially the majority of their occupation is using these things here. Whereas the theoretical timeline relates to how the universities, we tend to spend a lot of our time, because I've come historically from a university standpoint. So I've come from 10 years working in an academic background. I now work for Pack Engineering, delivering their R&D projects. So there's a lot of time spent in here. So PAK Engineering were, after they were formed, originally were making a lot of money leading up to the financial crisis. It was all great using the fin tube, manufacturing fin tubes. They were going to multiple industries. It was fantastic. Then the financial crisis occurred. The business had to significantly restructure itself, and that's when it went into the prototyping element. It sort of reduced down, like a lot of companies, and it went down to prototyping, and it started to specialize. More and more different products were expanded out. They expanded into various areas, and this is where Pack R&D was established around 2014, when they first started to get involved with Innovate UK, other R&D projects associated with the universities, where we started to essentially send our rigs to university premises to go into the labs, when certain things were required. In 2018, a project was started called Project Welfare. This was looking at HVAC systems for scrubbing of ammonia from poultry farms, essentially. And a discussion was had during that between myself, because I was managing it while working at the university, and the director, to say, right, there's a potential exploitation in this project here. Let's basically, if we were to pool our resources, we could basically look into expand and develop more projects going forward in the future off the back of this. So in 2020, I came into the company, and now we're looking into developing the R&D base, expanding it a bit further now. Now, what were we looking for in aerospace? We were a commercial enterprise. You know, it was a case of one of the things we noticed on historical projects, you were going from project to project to project, and ideas were being explored, but nothing was, there was no sort of major commercialization of products coming through from this. So we're interested in ideas that are ultimately going to make money for the business, whether it's through generation IP or things that we're going to be looking to develop, you know, to manufacture. We like to develop ideas too, because that enables you to work in collaborations with people where you can get a lot of work done, and it's where innovation occurs through essentially the pooling of minds. But we wanted to really avoid the spinning of wheels. What do I mean by that? It's the thing where we were running from project to project to project, never really getting anything, and we were just essentially, it was essentially creating entropy within our enterprise. So how and why we approached aerospace up. Let me explain how this has come around. So initially it was through just seeing an advertisement in LinkedIn. Because of my history of working within the university itself, a friend of mine who was linked in with happened to be working linked into Aerospace Up. I saw an advertisement, and this was linked to a previous idea, which I'll explain shortly. So this then led to an online coffee, as I imagine quite a number of you have had, catching up, what's this all about, etc. And then we attended this an Aerospace Up event. I believe that was the end of February when we attended that first one there. Now, we were made aware of a battery technology and some of the developments that were going through battery technology from this podcast here, which many of you may have seen. If you've not seen, I really do advise it, called Fully Charged. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. If any of you here are fans of Red Dwarf in the 1980s, it's run by the guy who played Crichton from that. So I think his name's Matthew Llewellyn or something along those lines. But they explore a lot of the technologies associated with batteries and renewables, etc. But we were made aware that there was, well, I was specifically made aware that of heat exchangers for batteries and the various innovations these were going into across multiple industries. Now, we produce heat exchangers. So I had a discussion with Paul at the time, and he basically had worked on a previous project based upon a completely different thing where they developed a battery cooling system. But this was using an additive manufacturing technique, essentially. Now, this system, they had to use a number of traditional manufacturing methodologies to connect certain parts of it up to a main manifold. I won't go into the details about the innovation at this time, but basically the way in which the additive manufacturing had developed since that project, which had occurred in 2017, advances had come so far that we believe that the entire unit itself could be 3D printed on its own. So essentially we had a potential commercially exploitable innovation, which we'd like to look for an application. So then it came to identification of the correct application. So it was, what application are you going to utilize it for? I put a picture of a spanner here. It's kind of an analogous methodology. It would be a case of you wouldn't try and remove a crosshead screw with a spanner. You'd use as crosshead screwdriver. So it was a case of identification of the correct tool, the correct application for this innovation we were looking for. So we wanted to collaborate with people. So having identified this as a potential collaborative route, we wrote a one-page proposal and sent it in to Aerospace Up. We were then contacted by a business development manager, and we were provided an expertise consultation with a professor from the university. He'd read our proposal. He explained he'd like to meet us. Now, what did we get from that discussion? Well, what we'd found was our initial, in terms of the business itself, our initial impression of the types of applications that were available to us were the tip of the iceberg. There were multiple from the information which he was showing us. So it widened our appreciation of what was available and the different applications that this could go into. Now, we were initially looking at aerospace because planes are looking to be electrified, batteries are heavy. Ways in which you could reduce how heavy these batteries were. One of the things was increase the efficiency of batteries, and one of the ways you can do that were thermal management systems. But one of the things that we immediately thought was, off that one idea sprang multiple other ideas, and this just came through the conversation. Now, within that conversation itself, one of the key points which we did find, there was a key idea identified, and this just came through that initial discussion itself. Now, I put a picture of a Ferrari and a Fiesta here. This is an analogous story. We wanted to identify a suitable piece of software which we could bring in-house. Now, working in a university context, I'd always utilize some fairly state-of-the-art software which is available to universities. But looking at the sale of this to us as an SME, it would have cost £12,000 for the year. Now, that is a piece of software which is fairly sophisticated, and we were looking to basically use it for some of our other products. So it was a case of, we didn't really want to buy the Ferrari, we wanted the Fiesta. It was the identification of which piece of software we needed to use. Well, the good thing was that engagement with Aerospace Up enabled us to collaborate then with an expert and give us access to that technology, to that software. So where we're looking to take this now, well, we've got this key idea. We're looking to develop this going forward within an Innovate project going forward, so which we'll do, and we'll collaborate with them. We're also looking to upgrade our additive manufacturing base, so potentially looking at grants as long as we can develop this main idea. In terms of spinning wheels, we'd also like to avoid rabbit holes. What I mean by that is engagement with the experts should enable us to avoid wasting our time going to dead ends and being rejected in future. And then finally, we'd like to develop some of these other ideas which we've identified. And that is essentially it. If anybody would like to hear more from the types of things that we do, there's my email address. But thank you very much.
David, that's excellent. Thank you. So again, some themes coming through, businesses moving from one area of industrial expertise into another, and also really how an object lesson in how to tap into the innovation resources. I love the illustrations, the rabbit down the hole, but I also particularly like the graphic saying, hello, I'm an expert. So we're now going to say, hello, I'm an expert to 5 experts. If I can ask them virtually to kind of come towards the stage and to turn their cameras on and straighten their ties and smooth their dresses. Andrew, Pamela, Lisa, Liz, and Vicky. Our panel of experts who are the people who are here to tell the business people how they can be supported in the kinds of things that David was just describing. For time reasons, I'm going to ask the panelists to join together the first 2 questions which we suggested that you might address. So if each panelist can briefly explain what their organization does, how they can be helpful in relation to aerospace and how people can access. So what you're about and how you can help people. Quick summary from each of the panelists, and then later on we'll ask each of them to talk about something they've been doing recently to support the aerospace businesses. So our first of our 5 panelists is Andrew Chadwick from the Catapult. Andrew.
So thank you very much indeed, and hello to everyone. My name is Andrew Chadwick. I'm from Connected Places Catapult. I'm the Aviation Technology Initiative Lead, and it's a pleasure to speak to you today. So the Connected Places Catapult is one of 9 innovation centres across the UK. The innovation centres provide world-leading centres designed to transform and accelerate the UK's capability for innovation and also future economic growth. The Connected Places Catapult is the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, for transport, and also for places. And we have offices in Milton Keynes and in central London. So we're a neutral, trusted, and also an expert convener, and we operate at the intersection between public and private sectors, so between local and central government, and we address today's and also tomorrow's challenges. And so our focus is on connecting businesses in order to generate new opportunities and also accelerate the creation of innovative products and services which will deliver solutions. We have a number of ways of doing this. We have an SME community network, of which there's 4,500 members, and which you're all welcome to join. I can put the details online here. And also we have an academic network, which currently has over 300 members plus six deep academic alliances. So within the SME community and the academic networks, we provide and share business opportunities, business support, a number of networking events, even in these times, and also support to specific Connected Places Catapult projects, so particularly around collaborative R&D programs. We also have a number of business fellows within the academic partner institutes, and they bring research outputs closer to commercialization. So this brings academics to increase industry engagement, entrepreneurship, and also research impact to support their universities, and also to help them achieve their knowledge exchange framework targets. The experts within the business fellows they help us identify opportunities for deeper university, Connected Place Catapult, and also industry collaborations. And so we can accelerate pace, scale, and impact of collaborative R&D. In addition to this, we also facilitate a number of calls for proposals for clients. In particular for the Department for Transport, we're the innovation partner for the Go Science Group. And we have a number of Department for Transport Research Innovation Grants, or TRIGs. Recently, we held a Drones Challenge TRIG, but we also have had them over the past year or so for transport challenges, accessibility, and also aviation security. Of note, we have one which we're launching in late June, which is related to a project we've just recently started for Department for Transport, which is looking at the transition to hydrogen and electric aircraft within UK airports. And so this TRIG, as I said, which will be launched in late June, and we'll be seeking proposals for UK companies and academia for innovative technology or research expertise, particularly around the handling and storage of hydrogen, electric charging, and also research into future demand scenarios for airside use of green hydrogen and electricity at UK airports. Further details of that will be on the website. I can share the details again with you in a second on the chat. And we have a number of other opportunities as well, which we're launching later in the year. But I'll hand you over to the rest of the panel.
That's great, Andrew. And we might ask you a little bit more about that TRIG detail in a moment. And then
Sure.
Next, Pamela to talk about Midlands Aerospace Alliance and what people can access in terms of support from your organisation. Pamela.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, my name is Pamela Farris. I'm a technology manager with Midlands Aerospace Alliance. I have a background in sort of science and engineering. The Midlands Aerospace Alliance, if you don't know it, is one of the largest aerospace cluster organisations in the world, with 300 members, ranging through businesses which do the main engineering, flying parts, support to bigger companies, the bigger companies themselves, and all sorts of services that to support those companies in servicing the aerospace industry. For members, we have a focus around business development, sort of supply chain quality and technology development activities, and we have working groups looking at those. We help our members generally through networking, information sharing, sector strategy development, events and targeted actions in some of these specific committee areas, and particularly it's the technology projects that I work on and I want to tell you about today. So we've now got a track record going back more than 10 years of designing and delivering funded technology and innovation projects, such as NATEP and some work that we did in the drama additive manufacturing programme. They're open to any eligible, these programs are generally open to any eligible company, not just our members. There's often a focus on delivering these to SMEs. And a unique feature is how much mentoring and support we offer the companies to both apply for and deliver those projects. We're now really getting up to speed on aerospace unlocking potential, which has got grants of up to £100,000 of ERDF support on around a 50% funding basis. It varies a little according to area. And that's available across 8 Midlands LEPs, including SEMLEP, and that's to work on innovation development. Happy to talk to, it's really about getting new products, new processes, really a sort of bit of a step change in the innovation work that companies are doing. Happy to talk to anyone today on this meeting if they've got an idea that they they think might be eligible, or to arrange a separate meeting to go into that and see whether we've got something you could take forward. In addition to this funding for technology grants, which Hitendra also talked about, there's a broader range of non-financial support, and my colleague from University of Nottingham, who we're working with on Aerospace Up, is now going to tell you about those other aspects of support.
Thanks, Pamela. Good morning, everyone. I am Lisa Brewer. I work on Hitendra's team at the University of Nottingham and on the Aerospace Unlocking Potential programme. As Pamela rightly said, we work very closely with the Midlands Aerospace Alliance on this. And aside from the fantastic grant funding that this programme offers, we also offer support through the university. So this can include things like access to academic support and research support, student placements. As Hitendra mentioned earlier, we have the amazing Precision Manufacturing Centre, which can help small and medium-sized enterprises with that kind of front-end product development piece. So things like prototyping and measurements and assessment as to why things are failing, that kind of thing. We also offer workshops and events. So our next event will actually be an innovation mapping event. We've got some really great speakers from Innovate UK and also the university. So when I finished, I'll pop the link to that particular workshop in the chat, so you'd be more than welcome to join us. So yeah, we really want to build a community of SMEs through this project, to build ongoing relationships, with the Midlands Aerospace Alliance and with the university itself. But again, any questions or anything you want to raise with us, feel free to pop that in the chat and we'll pick them up from there. So I'll hand over now to Liz, who's from the Eagle Labs.
Yep, so thanks, Lisa. So my name is Liz Boydie, and I'm the ecosystem manager for Cranfield Lab. Cranfield Lab is a partnership with Cranfield University and Barclays Bank. What we do is we provide a space. We have a network of about 25 spaces across the country, with more in the pipeline. And what we do is our focus is mainly to help and to connect, educate, accelerate ambitious UK businesses and entrepreneurs. Our spaces are industry aligned, and our Cranfield Lab is a partnership, as I said, with Cranfield University and Barclays. We are supporting aviation and aerospace technology businesses by providing collaborative working environments, access to peers, and opportunity to maximize growth through digital connections, curated events, funding, and mentoring opportunities. We also have a makerspace and an engineer to support businesses who have an idea to prototype them. As Ed said, there is a lot of testing facilities in Cranfield University to support the business to commercialization as well. So we help with supporting businesses commercialize, grow, and scale up within the space.
Thank you very much, Liz. And lastly, before we open up for questions, and do please start to think about the questions that you'd like to ask the panel. Vicky, who's from SEMLEP's Growth Hub. Vicky.
Thank you, Peter. So yes, I run the Growth Hub, and our remit is really to help businesses across Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes to thrive, or certainly in the last 12 months, also to survive the impacts of the pandemic. So we support approximately 2,000 businesses a year through a range of initiatives, and I've just picked a couple to share quickly with you this morning that I think would be relevant to this sector. And really just to say that it's been brilliant actually to hear from such sector specialists this morning. But we recognise as a Growth Hub that whatever sector you're in, the importance of good business practice and developing and working on the business, learning from others, and as David said, to avoid spinning wheels and going down rabbit holes. So just a couple of initiatives that we run, which hopefully help businesses to avoid doing those things. One is really just to flag. So we're funded by government. So we're able to provide access to free business advisors. We have a team of experienced business advisors, many who've run their own businesses, including advisors who've got experience in the aerospace sector. And we tailor the support to your needs. But one of the things we've developed in the past 12 months is a resilience diagnostic tool that we've developed with Grant Thornton. And it's really a chance to do a sort of holistic business review, look at your strengths and weaknesses, look at the core parts of of your business operation, whether it's the sales and marketing, operations, finance, and leadership. Look at where you are, where you want to be, and how we can help you get there. And some of the key ways we do that is making introductions. So running an event like this this morning is a way of us working with our partners to help to facilitate those introductions, those collaborations, which we know are so valuable to taking your business forward. We're there for the long term. Our aim is to be the eyes and ears for new schemes and initiatives that will be sort of relevant and helpful to you, and also to be that independent check and challenge, help you to set and achieve goals, set action plans, and help to ensure that you can achieve those. The second one is access to finance. That's probably the number one thing that businesses come to us for. And it's really key that we help businesses find the right finance, the right options for you, whether that's debt or equity finance or grant funding. And we run a few grant schemes ourselves. I won't go into those right now because there might be an opportunity sort of slightly later on. But, we make introductions to some of the sort of key investment schemes in the area. So one of the ones we work quite closely with is the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, which delivers both equity and debt finance to a range of businesses, whether that's sort of early stage equity finance or kind of, looking for sort of that next stage to kind of, expand the business, and kind of sort of, purchase new equipment and take things to the next stage. And the third area, which is something that we've launched fairly recently, is around peer support, and the value of sort of bringing groups of businesses together with like-minded business owners who run businesses of a similar size, recognizing that often as an owner manager, it can be quite lonely to sort of, run a business and sort of, where do you go for that sort of insight and advice? So we've been delivering a program of peer networks partnered with Cranfield University and their experienced business school and business counsellors there to deliver peer networks, running groups of sort of 10 businesses, sort of 8 sessions over a period of a couple of months to not only learn from other businesses in the group, but also learn from experienced business counsellors from Cranfield, develop an action plan and kind of look at what steps you want to put in place to kind of, recover your business and put plans in place for the next sort of 12 to 24 months, recognising that businesses often don't have time to sort of work on the business. They're so busy working in the business. But that's just a few of our schemes that I hope will be of interest and benefit to this audience this morning. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Vicky. So I can encourage people to either put their digital hand up or to put any questions they'd like to ask the panel in the chat, and we'll come to the panel for another round in a moment. And also, if there's any more detail that any panelists feel they weren't able to give in their relatively short initial introductions, do then flag if there's something that you'd like to make sure that you've passed on to everyone. But I said I'd come back to Andrew because it did sound as though that request for proposals under the TRIG process that he gave the outline for sounded very, very interesting. And I should say, I understand that, Andrew, you were due to be on leave this week and you've come off leave to be able to be with us this morning. So that's hugely appreciated. So if you'd like to, just give us a little bit more, and in particular, what types of businesses and what types of ideas do you think might be successful within that round that you've got coming up?
Absolutely, Peter. So thank you. So the project that we have is looking at the introduction of particularly hydrogen and electric fueled aircraft into airports. So it's across 3 different scenarios. One is electric aircraft in general aviation airfields. The second is with regional airports looking at hydrogen and electric. and then major international airports focusing on hydrogen. So within that project, there's a lot of studying around there. The idea is to develop a concept of operations across all those scenarios. But in support of that and to help inform, we've got a number of opportunities. One is the TRIG, so the Transport Research Innovation Grant. So we'll be looking at, and I'll share the details in a moment on the chat, but we'll be seeking research ideas from SMEs and academics for a number of projects looking at, particularly around hydrogen, looking at storage, handling, aspects around aircraft, refueling, defueling, distribution of hydrogen around airfields, and also all the associated technologies. Similarly, from electric perspective, looking at electric charging, storage, handling, looking at batteries, electric distribution, and also, again, the associated technologies for that. And then finally, research into future demand scenarios for airside use, particularly of green hydrogen and electricity at UK airports. So the actual specific challenge itself will be announced, as I said, at the end of June, but we are looking, and there's an expression of interest phase at the website, which provides the opportunity for companies to show us what information is currently available. It's to help inform us, so it's not a precursor for entry into the TRIG competition, but it's a useful opportunity for companies to share some of their thoughts, ideas, and capabilities that are currently available. As I said, we have a number of these TRIG programs, and we've recently just completed the competition for a drones TRIG, which was associated with our Pathfinder Catalyst program. So the Catapult, for example, we chair and convene the government's drones Pathfinder Catalyst program on behalf of Department for Transport and BAYS, and working with the Civil Aviation Authority. So that's the piece of the most immediate piece of work that we have. But also, I've got a moment as well. We have a number of accelerator programs through the Catapult. We've had 6 very successful ones in the last 18 months. And we'll be launching another one in August. And this is our first one looking at future air mobility. We're still in the early stages of planning, but details will be made available on our website, and I'm more than happy to share that with your listeners and viewers today. But we'll be looking at potential challenges on data-driven aviation around airport systems, and also on drones. So that's something else to look forward to in July, August time this year. So there's a number of activities throughout the work that we do within the Catapult.
Andrew, that's great, and thank you for putting those details in the chat chat as well. If I can just sort of ask a slightly more general question, maybe Pam and Lisa could address this. How closed is the aerospace as a sort of sector? It feels like it's probably something that's felt quite sort of specialist, and you're either in aerospace or you're not. Maybe I'm just seeing that from a distance, and that's not the right perception. But what are you doing? How open is it for people who've come from other backgrounds, a bit like PAK engineering, to be able to move into aerospace in this era of cross-fertilization? Pam, maybe you can address it first.
Yeah, I would in fact say what we do at Midlands Aerospace Alliance is very much bottom up. It's driven by what the companies are doing themselves, and we just really facilitate them to do more of what they know they need to do. We will help people to break into the sector. But I mean, what we often realise is that companies that we think of as our, aerospace membership, or companies that we know that we think of as aerospace companies, we can sometimes be quite surprised to discover that that they do quite a considerable amount of their business in different sectors. So there are a lot of companies who are already, working across sectors. And in fact, we should mention also that we are. And I'm sure Andrew Mayer, the Chief Executive, will mention this afternoon. We are also starting a pilot for a pivot programme, which is actually about taking technologies from other sectors into aerospace. So we've got that to interest people in a slightly narrower geographical area in as well as aerospace. It's Yeah, I would say aerospace is pretty open, but it has its own challenges. But there's plenty of experience in other sectors which is very relevant, and it might be expressed in slightly different languages or use different standards. But I think people can be probably pleasantly surprised by how applicable some of their knowledge is from other sectors when they approach it.
That's great to hear. Lisa, do you want to address that as well in terms of how this sort of cross-sector, cross-fertilization is happening, and how to encourage as many businesses as possible to think that they've got capabilities that are relevant for aerospace?
Absolutely. I think with the pandemic as well, we've seen a lot of diversification. So companies that may have had something on the back burner for quite some time that maybe didn't think was relevant to the aerospace sector have come forward with ideas for projects and things, and we found that they are very relevant for the aerospace sector, and consequently are eligible for support through Aerospace Unlocking Potential. So what I would say is, if you think you do have something, don't be afraid, please come and talk to us. We're happy to look at it and see what we can do to help.
Thank you, Lisa. And Liz, obviously you're of general business support, but you've got a specific project, the Aviate project, which I was just wondering if there's anything more you wanted to say about that specifically to encourages the businesses that are on this call.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So yeah, we are as Cranfield Eagle Lab, we're creating. We have, as I said, we have a co-working space to support the aviation businesses to call it their home, to meet with like-minded businesses to help collaborate and innovate, where we support the businesses as well with mentoring. We work with the likes like Codebase and Cambridge Arch Business School, the Cranfield University specialists to help the businesses as well. So physical space, we have curated events which are themed, a platform where you connect with other like-minded businesses. And quite recently, we have had an announcement, we've made an announcement quite recently as Cranfield being one of the university enterprise zones. It's been awarded a 1.2 million from Research England, which is going to enable an extension to our offering. So it's called Aviate Plus, and it's going to be a grow-on space from the lab, where the business can grow onto. The build will be ready in Q4, which will be, as I said, a private office spaces, workshops. They'll have benches, assembling points for larger components to be assembled, and there'll be appropriate power and data connectivity, which is particularly beneficial to aviation tech companies. And that would have a clear product development pathway, and demonstrating high value potential will be that space for them. So we're creating this community where aviation, transport, businesses would be coming to where we'd have a cluster of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship thriving in the space. So please connect with me if you want to find out more and on how we could support your business growth.
That's great, Liz. Thank you. Okay, we've got just about 4 or 5 minutes before we take our break. I'll take a couple of comments that have come up. Simon Toseland, then I'll come to David Teklow. Simon, do you want to come off mute and ask your question in relation to the cost of hydrogen, which I know that you're closely involved in?
Peter, thanks. Yeah, we've got a scheme where we've got a 750-acre formula-ready airfield in Northamptonshire, which is currently a renewable energy facility where it's using 9 wind turbines and 500,000 solar panels. And we're just 2/3 of the way through building a 60 megawatt array for the generation of hydrogen. But of course, the issue with hydrogen in terms of commercial use for hydrogen is the cost of it. There are other complications around, as you touched on, Andrew, in terms of transporting it, moving it around, etc. But from a commercial perspective, how is that going to work in terms of hydrogen being sold to commercial users? We've developed a diesel engine with DAF in Holland that's now running on site on a 30% hydrogen mix, 30% hydrogen diesel mix. But it's expensive stuff to make, and it's expensive stuff to move.
Andrew.
Simon, yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the question. I mean, it's a great question, and part of the work that we're doing is not just looking at the technical aspects of how we introduce hydrogen and electric into airports, but it's also looking at those other implications. So, you know, so looking at the business case aspects, also looking at diversification as well. So not just using the fuels, for example, for aircraft, but maybe using them for other ground vehicles within the airport, but also being able to sell or pass on that fuel to maybe the local communities or other users. So we're doing a lot of work around heavy transport. So there are other opportunities, and what we're doing as part of our project will be to look at that, as well as some of the environmental implications. So what are the actual, is there a positive effect on the environment by introducing these new fuels, the new handling practices, storage and everything else. So it is one thing. So I don't have a question for you now, Simon, but in our project, which is a 12-month project, you know, it's one thing that we are definitely looking at.
Yeah, so we're working a little bit with Cranfield, with Phil Hart, in terms of what we're doing there with the internal combustion engines. We should be at about 40% hydrogen on the ice by the end of this year. So, I mean, if it can work commercially, obviously it's a huge step forwards, isn't it, in terms of transport, because we need to take small steps. It's all very well saying we're going to jump straight into totally renewable solutions, and why are you still using diesel? The answer is because it's small steps from diesel to hydrogen, and we have to go through this process of mixing and working with both.
Absolutely, and we recognise that. So, and we also recognise within the project, I mean, it's, you know, there will be a mix of different fuel types. It's going to have to be able to operate alongside with kerosene, and it could be a number of years in which you have that mix. So it's one of the things we are looking at. And apart from the TRIG, we're also going to have a number of demonstrations, so which will be funded. So again, I've shared the website details. So that will be announced in the coming weeks and months, where we'll have a number of demonstrations where we'll be asking or looking at specific types of technologies, and it might be something that you have could feed into that. At this moment, we've only recently started, so I couldn't say exactly what we will be looking at, but the idea of this project is to look at all the different options, what's out there right across the UK. So this is so that we can drive UK innovation and help companies and startups and academics develop those capabilities in the UK that can be used both here in the UK and also exported. So thank you, and I've now made a note of your name, Simon. So
thank you.
Thanks, Andrew and Simon. Fascinating exchange. And then David, last contribution from you before we take our break.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think I'd just like to emphasize the point regarding dialogue within the conversations which we've had so far existing with Aerospace Up. What we've found is, I mean, we have our own problems of innovations which we've approached Aerospace Up and other business development managers about, and that has given us access to other people that might have a solution to the problem. I mean, a real good example, Pamela, our discussion a few weeks ago, you had a particular problem on a different innovation, which just through that conversation we had on that call, we now have this meeting tomorrow with this other company, because we had a potential solution for that, and we're having that discussion tomorrow. It's with the issue of the hydrogen interests me, because there are a number of angles in which I would approach that. There could be something in the actual manufacture process, which the cross-sectoral exploitation routes are available. It's just actually understanding what the problem is, and then having access to people with skills that might be able to offer solutions from looking at the problem at a different angle based upon their own skill set. It's the value in having the dialogue and having the conversations is invaluable for us as an SME. We've found, because that's given us access to other technologies which we can protect and projects which we can exploit.
David, that's a great story and a great lesson to take from our first session. So thank you to all of our speakers, to our panelists, the people who provided those introductions and some real inspiration. I'm stepping away now because I'm going off to be interviewed by the BBC about the Oxford-Cambridge Arc and the opportunities thereof. After the break, Alistair Lomax, who's the director of the Arc Universities Group, will be hosting some discussion about some of the innovation priorities and the opportunities for business within the Arc. As part of the role that I play in the overall Oxford-Cambridge Arc leadership executive, I have an opportunity to kind of promote the businesses and the sectors that are going to be most important in the Arc. And aerospace is one of the 5 identified priorities within the economic prospectus for the Arc. So what I've heard this morning and the really exciting presentations and the ferment of ideas inspires me, and I will certainly take the message about the importance of investment in aerospace into the various fora that I'm involved in. I'm going to suggest that we can keep the connections open during the next 15 minutes. So we'll be starting again at 11:35 or just after. And if people want to carry on talking, for instance, if that conversation about hydrogen, do feel free to use it, but let's keep the connection open, and then Alistair will pick up afterwards. Thank you all again very much for attending, and enjoy the rest of your morning. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Speaking, just if there is anybody that wants to stay connected, some of our panel have very kindly said that they're not going to slip away during the break. So if anybody's got any questions they didn't get a chance to ask, now's a good opportunity. If you need to go, we completely understand. Always say probably keep your camera and your sound connected. Leave the. I think there was somebody put a comment in the chat. I just saw it flash by a moment ago.
Yeah, so we had someone talking about urban air mobility.
That was right.
And who wants to talk to us at Aerospace Up, which we'll be glad to do. I have to say I'm not a huge expert on future of urban air mobility. I've got pretty into additive manufacturing is what I've been in more recently, but I do cover a lot of things. Yet we are particularly interested in, it was nice to hear from Andrew, we are particularly interested in how people are kind of reassessing, partly as the impact of COVID has given people, they've been less busy with the day-to-day production in aerospace particularly. So I think we are seeing a lot of companies who are thinking about how they might adopt some of the more greener directions as they regrow after the impact of the COVID crisis, which is interesting. And I've been on sort of enterprise meetings with other LEP areas as well, and they're reporting quite a lot of vibrancy in the sort of startup market and people taking on board support to get companies going. So yeah, I do expect to see quite a lot of unusual and exotic company ideas taking shape.
Andrew, if you're still with us, I don't know whether or not you've disappeared for your comfort break, but Chadwick, if you're still with us, you want to come off mute if you wanted to comment on that at all. Don't know whether he's still with us or not.
He obviously needed to stretch his legs.
Fair enough. I do know one of Andrew's colleagues joined recently. I think she moved over from Innovate. I know that they're going to be looking quite a lot at urban air mobility.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some interest in Aerospace Up actually from a company who are looking at it a bit differently, but actually looking at hybridizing some of the operations of heavy lift cargo drones. So that's quite an interesting one. We do get to look at a very broad range of technologies when we're looking for proposals in Aerospace Up, because we're, we don't have themes. It's just it's very much led by what the companies need to do bottom up. So yeah, we get a very wide variety of technologies coming our way.
It's Alistair here. Very good to meet you, and enjoyed your presentation. I've been listening in the wings. and fascinated by your Pivot program. I wondered if you've seen the Starling, the prototype that's at Cranfield, and it's a vertical takeoff hybrid to become electric, and they are looking at cargo as one of their things, and have a very big vision, and you know, it's very exciting. They've got some very good visualization on their website, which always helps.
So is that a big kind of tilt rotor, but also wing lift type system? Is it?
It's got a wing, but the rotors are in the wing. Sorry, John.
I was just going to say, you're a little bit quiet. Are you able to turn your sound up just a fraction? We can hear you, but it might be helpful if you could.
Well, maybe I need to just get close to the microphone.
That's brilliant. Yeah, do you mind?
That's the analog version of improving it.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Ian just wants to test his presentation. So my screen's going to go off for a minute, but you guys carry on. That's what we're doing in the background.
No problem. That's fine. Thanks for the warning, Sam.
So that's the SAMAD Aerospace
right, yeah,
thing. Yeah. Okay, so that's a sort of
on the
bigger thing. Okay, no, interested to chat. Yeah, I mean I worked on a much a project with a company in the NATEP days, something much smaller, but it was a VTOL. I mean, they called themselves VTOL Technologies, sort of based here in Reading. Yes, I'm giving away that I'm in the deep south of the Midlands, otherwise known as Reading. But that was a a vertical takeoff tilt rotor. But that was very much a UAV for things like infrastructure inspection, rather than this sort of scale that we're talking about here. So.
Fairly strong bit of elastic you're using it in the Midlands down to Reading, isn't it?
I see the Midlands is gradually taking over the over the world. Yeah, I think I'm probably living in the wrong bit of the country. I did work at Farnborough for a good while, but the real kind of, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on, but a lot of digital electronics and all that sort of stuff. But my personal interests are kind of more in the advanced end of making things. So composites, ceramic composites, very high temperature materials, and additive manufacturing. So that kind of plays to more the Midlands capabilities.
Yeah. It's probably worth mentioning one of the projects that had some funding through SEMLEP. We've got the new, and I'm trying to remember the correct terminology, digital manufacturing centre.
Thank
you. They get the name right.
I worked with them on drama, so they had a bit of factory planning through drama. Worked on their layout. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Hoping to be able to get there in person at some point. There have been various points over the past year when I thought I was going to get an invitation to actually go and visit, but I think we've all become much more patient about timescales now, haven't we? And stopped pushing. They will happen when they happen.
Yeah.
So John, SEMLEP's got this vast area. I wondered if you'd included Reading in that yet.
No, we haven't quite stretched that far. Yeah, I mean, the arc will get you not far away. The arc goes out almost to Swindon, so we're not too far away.
Well, it's good that it misses out Swindon, because the roundabout system is just too confusing.
Yeah. Obviously, being a Milton Keynes convert, I'm going to stay out of that. So I'm looking at our time check. I've got 11:33 now, Alistair. Where are you?
I'm on 11:31 actually.
Okay, that's fine. Mine's always a little bit fast. I do it on purpose. It's my way of scaring myself to think I'm late. Oh, here we go. I love Swindon. Magic roundabout. Thank you, Ian. I think. Go on.
I thought, Ian, you loved Reading because it's got such a swish station.
Yeah, no, Alistair, I love all railway stations. As an aviation person, I shouldn't really say that, should I? But I went through it late last night, and it was the Reading station, when they effectively rebuilt it and kept the main line open for couple of years, just about 2-3 years ago. It was an amazing project to watch.
Yeah, some of the replacement of some of the bridges was quite fun. The ones more on the out of town, but yeah, I do think that Reading Station looks a bit like, you know, a lovely regional airport somewhere in, you know, Spain or Italy that's had, you know, nice funding to get it revamped. It is quite something.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of our delegates are with us or whether they've all taken the opportunity to slip away, but has anyone got any question in the last minute or two before we resume? If you have, please come off mute.
I mean, happy to hear from, sorry, was it Sachin from, is it Volodorf? Yeah, Volodorf Litech, if you're there.
Doesn't look like. So we'll let you decide, Alistair. You're now taking the helm, so you decide when you want to resume. We did ask everyone to keep a line connected, so hopefully they'll all come back. We said sort of 11:35 or just after.
Okay, well, I think we'll start at 35.
Okay, that's over to you. So thank you. If you need me, I'm still here, but I'm going to put mine back on mute so I don't disturb you.
Thank you. Can you see me all right?
Yep.
Hi, Alistair.
Hi, Emmanuel. I'm going to sit up properly. So welcome back from the break. I'm feeling slightly nervous taking over from the former editor of Newsnight and Panorama and director of BBC Worldwide, Peter Horrocks. But I'll do my best and keep this brief because we have a wonderful array of speakers. So Cranfield and SEMLEP, right in the heart of the Oxford to Cambridge arc. My name's Alistair Lomax. I'm director of the ARC Universities Group and have been working very closely with aviation and sustainable aviation, which is one of the themes of the economic prospectus and of the Oxford to Cambridge arc. And it's wonderful to have this joint event with Nottingham because this is an issue that affects everybody. And it's whatever happens through such discussions, partnerships and exchanges is to the benefit of the whole planet. And it's great to see everyone here today. So I'm going to hand over to Ian Gray, first of all. And Ian is at the epicenter of a lot of this activity and is the chair of Arcavia, so the work that we're doing in the ARC. I'll leave Ian to talk about that. And so we've got three wonderful speakers, Ian Gray, and then Katie Milne, who is at the heart of things with Fly Zero, and then David Vasquez, who is at London Luton Airport just down the road, fascinating example of an airport that is owned by the local authority and very much part of the partnership around the work that we are doing in this area in the ARC. So each speaker going to ask them to speak for 10 minutes and please enter questions in the chat. We'll pick up themes as we go and then leave a good period of time at the end for some meaty discussion. So over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Alistair. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the presentations so far. I found them extremely informative. What I would like to do is touch a little bit on some thoughts I have around opportunities, broader opportunities that exist in the aviation agenda, and touch on three specific university initiatives that I'm involved in. In terms of you can see my slides, all right? Can you, Alistair?
Yes. Well, I could, but they simply disappeared now.
I'm not quite sure what happened there. They disappeared. Can you see them again?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't quite know what happened there. I mean, the subject, innovation and technology, I mean, it's a peculiar time to be talking about innovation and technology. We've just been through the worst 12 months imaginable in the aviation world. I mean, just this picture here of 747s lined up, having been retired early from British Airways, kind of gives it all away. But it is quite staggering that right at the moment, notwithstanding all of those challenges and difficulties, we're probably at the most exciting point in the aerospace agenda from a technology point of view in the last 40 years. Some terrific new technologies around materials, new advanced composites, graphene, new levels of autonomy coming in, whether it be reduced pilot workload, whether it be full autonomy on ground, on drones and advanced air mobility platforms. We're looking at new energy sources. We already talked today about batteries, hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels. There's an enormous amount of new technology development going on, and with that brings new opportunities. This picture here just illustrates some of the innovative aerospace platforms that are being developed. A number of these ideas within our region itself. The reaction engines, looking at real advanced high altitude rocket air-breathing engines. Airbus doing quite a bit of work in our region around hydrogen and new configurations. We talked about the SAMAD aerospace configuration, urban air mobility we've touched on. Fantastic opportunities. I think if I was to sum up, well, what are the key opportunities and challenges for us all? I would refer back to a quote at last year's or 2 years ago Paris Air Show from Grazia Vittadini from Airbus, who said, who was asked what her top 3 priorities were, and she said, my top 3 priorities are zero carbon, and zero carbon. There's no doubt that is the driver for the sector at the moment. But again, there's huge things going on. This slide here just summarizes some press headlines in the first few months of 2021. There's not a day, not a week goes by without somebody somewhere announcing some new partnership or new technology program on zero carbon. So opportunities are huge. I think what is massively important in the aerospace agenda is to acknowledge that probably for the first time in 2 or 3 decades, we need to be looking at the aerospace and aviation agenda in a much, much more joined up sense. At Cranfield, we refer to the 4 A's. In fact, we've extended it now, the 5 A's. Airspace of the future, aircraft of the future, airports of the future, airlines of the future, and the air passenger of the future. And for that community to be working together in this zero carbon agenda is absolutely key. The expectations of the public, the expectations of government in a regulatory point of view can only be met by everybody working together. There are 3 kind of university initiatives I want to briefly touch on. The first is the university I work at, which is Cranfield University, a lovely aerial photograph of Cranfield University here. Again, for reinforcing the point, it is the only university in Europe, I would argue the world, with its unique combination of its own airport, its own runway, its own aircraft, its own pilot, its own air navigation service provision, its own fuel farm. That presents a huge opportunity in a test and validation sense. Small businesses and businesses within the region and broader across the UK to test, develop, and do research. In fact, we've brought many of the facilities at Cranfield together, the new investments. We've invested well over £150 million over the last 4 years in new facilities into a concept that we've called Cranfield's Global Research Airport. It's a national asset from a UK perspective. And it's one that I would encourage businesses to get to know, to get familiar with. We've already heard during the course of the morning a number of examples of businesses that have worked at Cranfield. Epitomised by our very, very latest new facility, new building, BARTEC, Digital Aviation Research Technology Centre, established house our 737-400 ground-based demonstrator. You can see in this picture here the Availent radar, the holographic radar. We're developing a UTM lab, an unmanned traffic management lab. We're looking at the airport of the future, passenger experience of the future. And that very much links with the many other facilities that we have at Cranfield. We also heard Liz Bowdy talk about Barclays Eagle Lab and the link to Aviate Plus. Aviate Plus is a new technology entrepreneurship cluster, and together with the Barclays Eagle Lab, we've coined the phrase AvTech. We have FinTech, we have MedTech, why not AvTech? So developing the capability for small companies to grow their business, initially through Barclays Eagle Lab, into Aviate Plus, which has been funded, part of a university enterprise zone, allowing small companies access to a huge amount of research capability at Cranfield and access to that Cranfield Global Research Airport. So some really big opportunities at Cranfield University itself. We heard Hitendra at the beginning talk about the UK Aerospace Research Consortium. What we've done across the UK is we've pulled 11 of the key aerospace universities together into a consortium so that small businesses don't have to walk all around the UK to find which university does which. There's a front door in to the wider aerospace university network. There are 3 universities on this network that are local to us: Cranfield University, Nottingham University, University of Cambridge. We've secured funding from EPSRC, put a network together. It's a perfect opportunity really for small businesses and those that cannot afford the luxury that some of the larger OEMs have, who have their own university network connection frameworks. It allows small universities to gain access into the broader UK aerospace research collaborative capabilities. Then finally, the initiative which Alistair talked about, Peter talked about, which is the Oxford-Cambridge ARC and the Oxford-Cambridge ARC Universities Group. Peter described the 5 different priorities that the Oxford-Cambridge ARC Universities Group have, but one of them is sustainable aviation. There are 9 universities in the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, and 5 of them very actively involved in the Sustainable Aviation Challenge: Oxford, Cambridge, Cranfield, New Bucks, Anglia Ruskin. And they're looking at the whole Sustainable Aviation Initiative in a framework that we've pulled together and we've called OCAVIA. OCAVIA stands for the Oxford-Cambridge ARC Virtual Institute of Aviation, and it's bringing all the strengths of those universities together with a governance model that effectively has 5 work streams: an aviation impact evaluator, technology accelerator, what we've called an aviation Minecraft or digital twinning, how we build physical and virtual capabilities side by side, and skills development, and an end-to-end aviation system. So I encourage you as small businesses to engage with the university network, to engage with Cranfield, to engage with the UK Aerospace Research Consortium, and to engage with Ocavia. But what does the future look like? I just would urge you very strongly, now is the time to think and act differently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for taking us through that, and what an extraordinary picture. And I think Ian personally is at the heart of a lot of these initiatives and holding so many things together. So thank you for your statesmanship on behalf of the whole industry. So we're going to move on now to another statesperson, Katie Milne, to talk about road maps and the roadmap to zero carbon emission aircraft, which is very much on the government's agenda, and having set the policy for zero carbon by 2050. And as Ian was reminding us only this morning, the decisions taken today are really important. They'll have an impact way into the future. Katie, welcome, and please take us through the roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. So the roadmaps that you're referring to, they are the kind of focus of the entire year at Fly Zero. I've just tried to share my screen. Is that working too? Yeah, okay, amazing. So thank you very much. And it's an honor to follow you, Ian Gray, a name that I've heard so many times, but have never actually met you. This sort of is like meeting, I don't know. So anyway, thank you very much. My name's Katie. I am the head of industrial strategy at Fly Zero, and I'm on secondment there, like most of the team. I'm seconded from the high value manufacturing catapult, but I'll flash up a slide in a minute that shows you where the rest of the team is from. So Fly Zero is a project run by the Aerospace Technology Institute, which is the UK's national funding organisation for aerospace specific related R&D. And we're basically taking a year and about 100 people in order to understand how the UK can contribute strategically to realising zero carbon emissions flight by the end of the decade. And hopefully this will make a strategic case for UK involvement, which can then allow people like Cranfield, but UK industry, to pursue it at a higher rate and scale. Sorry. So the focus of the project is in the kind of short and medium range aircraft, so from sub-regional up to single aisle aircraft. We're not particularly focusing on Fly Zero on very short range, so city hops. We're interested in the technology, since those aircraft might be proving grounds for things like more electric flight. But we're really interested in aircraft that carry more passengers and contribute to a lot more of the CO2 emissions. So hopefully I'll get these statistics right. Narrow body aircraft like the 737 or A320 contribute to something like 91% of flight and 48% of CO2 emissions. So once you move up into this area, you can begin to make a real impact. We're also not looking at the very long range aircraft, which is probably a longer term challenge to decarbonise, and sustainable aviation fuels, whether that's biofuel, waste fuel, or synfuel, are in that area. And we've identified 24 technology bricks. You can see those here. They're of kind of varying levels of criticality, but at the moment we're trying to be inclusive and exhaustive with things that we think have potential to address zero carbon. But we're just at the stage of kind of down selecting on things like fuel sources. So if you check in with Fly Zero events in the near term, you'll see that this is a kind of reduced list that will happen over the next few weeks. And what we want to do is, by the end of the project, is to get to around 10 technology bricks or groups of technologies against which we have a technology roadmap for the UK. And we'll also probably produce some product roadmaps against specific aircraft types as well. And then these will be used by the ATI going forward, against which to make the assessment on priorities for funding. And we'll also use the roadmaps, but also the research we do to support the strategic case for investment, whether that's private investment or public investment. So in terms of the timeline, we're here. We've carried out an initial assessment of these technology bricks. We're now going on to combine these into different concept aircraft. And the purpose for doing that is to get a deeper understanding of things like the trades, carrying out technology roadmaps and economic and sustainability assessments. And then we'll move on to proposing follow-on activity, which could be, these are examples. So things around manufacture of hardware, flying test beds, and suggesting how we would work with the broad UK community to deliver those. So the team's built up of experts that are on secondments from the organisations that are shown here, but it's also got a number of independents in it. And we're working across the whole ecosystem, so trying to understand the kind of considerations around things like the airports as well as production. And it's pretty chicken and egg, especially around things like hydrogen and battery powered aircraft. If you can't refuel them, then you can't buy them in the first place, you know. And we're in that situation at the moment with cars, you know, with passenger vehicles. So we'll have the same challenge to overcome for airports, but with a much higher capital investment barrier. So UK roadmaps, these are our 24 technology bricks. In September, I want to publish a document on UK capabilities and opportunities. And then by the end of the project, we'll have these, I've said 6, I may be being optimistic, that would be nice, 6 to 10 roadmaps against different technology groups, and then roadmaps against concept aircraft types. And we'll also put out the UK strategic case. On that first deliverable, so UK capabilities and opportunities, I'm really keen to get a regional view. And so I've been talking to Alistair and my colleagues. Some of them have already been talking to Ian about what each region can contribute in the UK. I'm keen on that for a number of reasons. I believe that there is a cluster or anchoring effect around people like co-located and working together that we need to bring out. I'm also keen on it because the regions have some autonomy, you know, so some autonomy around R&T funding occasionally, but definitely around infrastructure funding. And so there's the opportunity, I think, for UK regions to act as well as central government. So I'll just give you a little bit of info on ways to get involved, because I think this will be most interesting to any companies on the phone. So we're subcontracting some work packages on specific questions where we're seeking expertise that we didn't manage to recruit into the team. And we're also going to be running forums and workshops and events. So some of those will be with the Midlands Aerospace Alliance, who are hosting this call. So over the next 3 months, we'll be launching these tenders for work packages on the FlyZero website. This is the link, www.ati.org.uk/FlyZero/work packages. And you can register there to be alerted when new work packages are added. There's different types. So there's work packages that anybody can tender for. And then there's also ones that are specifically for academia, which the UK Aerospace Research Consortium is also publicising through its channels. And then I've just thrown here some of the subject matters, but the best place to look is really the website. Because the project is short, so they'll only be up there for a short period of time, like 10 working days, unless it's bigger things. In terms of budget, we have about 1 million ring fence for the academic activity, and then we have another 1 million in total for these work packages. And there's probably about 20 in all against both areas, there's probably about 30 or 40. So that just gives you an idea of the scale. We're talking about tens of thousands of pounds, not hundreds or millions of pounds. And on IP specifically, the intention isn't really for it to be generating new products, so new electric motors, for example, but to be helping us to assess the feasibility of those technologies so that we can feed into these roadmaps. And we would like, the Aerospace Technology Institute would like to own those results or findings, but we're not expecting to own any foreground IP related to your products. So all that background IP would be protected, and we wouldn't expect you to bring it into the delivery of any work packages. So a group of things on airframe, a group on commercial, so things like safe and rapid turnaround, airport infrastructure, and then a final group on propulsion systems. And we're particularly struggling around finding capability in the UK that can address challenges around cryogenic fuel storage. So if you know of, or a company or organisation who has capability in that area, we are very keen to hear from you. And then just a slide on some of the specific things on cryogenic systems. So hydrogen tank design and validation, cryogenic systems architecture development, and then enabling technologies for cryogenic systems. And predominantly these things are around state of the arts, like large level performance assessments and trade-offs, just so that we can understand what the targets and content should be in the UK roadmaps. And then we want to hear from you. So even if you can't deliver one of those roadmaps, we still want to hear from you. Are you developing technology that's relevant to the technology bricks? Can you contribute to integration challenges? Do you have solutions for compressing the development cycle? You know, these new aircraft are going to take between 5 and maybe 20 years to take to market, but the faster we can do it, the sooner they can make an impact on climate change. Do you want to be part of the future supply chain, or do you have general advice you can give us? So some contact details there, but that's me, and thank you very much, Alistair, for your time. Stop sharing. I can.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was a great race through it, and what a lot of activity there is. And I wondered, actually just had a text from John Rawcliffe asking both of you if you could share slides, and David as well, just with delegates, so that afterwards I think there's some very practical things in your slides that people will want to pick up and respond to. Thank you very much. And now a few years ago I went to a presentation from Luton Airport about expansion, and it was all about, you know, thousands of more planes and hours and tons, and there wasn't actually, it felt like just an expansion of business as usual. And I think it's only recently that we've had people like David Vasquez enter the airport scene, but having heads of sustainability for airports, and we've all got them now. So I think the world has utterly changed. It's quite recent, and delighted to introduce David Vasquez from London Luton Airport, Head of Sustainability. Over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Hello, everybody. Great to be here today to talk about such a relevant, exciting topic. For those of you who may not be familiar with Luton Airport, we're the 5th largest airport and one of the fastest growing in the UK. One of the things that is unique about our airport is that it is owned by the people of Luton. The airport is 100% owned by the local council. And the head of sustainability for the operator, which manages the airport until 2031 and potentially beyond. So I don't have any slides today, and over the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to give you an overview on sustainable aviation and talk about some of the potential opportunities from an airport's perspective, and hopefully, to Alistair's point at the beginning, hopefully you'll hear a bit more about sustainable aviation from Luton Airport today. I strongly believe that climate change is the defining issue of our generation. This is a broad topic, which is particularly challenging within the aviation sector. The transport sector is responsible for around 15% of the total emissions in the UK, with aviation representing around 7% of those emissions. The UK and the industry recognizes the importance of the challenge, and that's why aviation was one of the first industries to come together and make a commitment to become net zero by 2050, aligned with the UK's national target. But of course, this happened in early 2020, and just a few weeks later, the industry was hit hard by COVID, which meant that entire fleets had to be grounded for most part of the year. and they're only now coming back into operation. A lot of the focus in 2020 has been on COVID, but this did not lower the importance of climate change. It was quite the opposite. COVID has created a paradigm shift, and the industry needs to work extremely hard, not just to bounce back and become greener, sort of bigger and better, but more importantly, to become greener than ever. So from an industry perspective, there is a strong commitment to decarbonize by 2050. There is also some great work from organizations like Jet Zero or Sustainable Aviation, which are bringing the industry together. So problem solved, right? No. As we know, the climate change is a highly complicated topic. And when we think about decarbonizing airports, it is important to make a distinction. This distinction is about emissions that are under the airport's direct control and emissions that come from partners operating at the airport. For airports, emissions that are under our direct control represent around 3% of the total emissions, whereas emissions from our partners represent 97%. Therefore, it is absolutely critical that airports collaborate with industry partners to help them decarbonize their operations. Their emissions come from people getting in and out of the airports, and this is about decarbonizing aircrafts and road vehicles, which, like I said, represents around 97% of the airport total emissions. We must not forget, however, that airports also need to transform their power supply through generation of renewables and electrify their vehicles to eliminate that 3% of emissions that we are directly responsible for. So I would say that innovations at airports needs to come from both areas to enable partners to decarbonize, but also to decarbonize the airport's infrastructure itself, so we're able to reach net zero. And as an industry, aviation has come together to pledge a 2050 net zero goal. And there is a roadmap developed by the industry group Sustainable Aviation, which details the key initiatives needed to decarbonize. These initiatives can be split into two groups, and I always use an aviation analogy for this one. The two groups are short haul and then long haul solutions. Bringing this into the context of airports, some of the short haul, short-term solutions are airspace modernization, investment in buildings and new vehicles, and facilitating the use of sustainable fuels. And then we have the long haul solutions that, for us, these are mainly important airport infrastructure upgrades that can support the decarbonization of key partners and allow them to use zero emissions aircrafts. We need to think about both short-term and long-term simultaneously. For airports, this means that we need to implement some of the technologies available in the short haul while we get ready for the long haul solutions. And this incredible complex challenge that airports are facing brings opportunities for research, opportunities for innovation, as well as commercial opportunities. Consensus is that there is no single silver bullet solution to tackle climate change. The complexity of the challenge cannot be underestimated. Doing the research, developing the innovations, testing those innovations, while simultaneously rolling them out and then integrating them into the operations. That is not a small challenge. And this challenge is not just for the airlines or the aircraft manufacturers, and not even just for the aviation or the transport sector alone. We need close collaboration between industry partners, but also policymakers and regulators, investors, academia, and of course, innovators. And that collaboration must also happen at regional level. So it's great to participate in events like the one today, with the SEMLEP and Nottingham University bringing together key players such as Cranfield University, which has helped numerous aviation ventures over the years, or Flight Zero, which has been tasked to help net zero commercial aviation become a reality by the end of the decade. It is fantastic to come together to exchange ideas and develop relationships so we can better understand the various perspectives and explore opportunities in the region. Great to be part of the conversation. Thank you. Alistair, back to you.
Thank you very much, David. And Luton Airport is of course, I mean, the other partner we're involved with is EasyJet, who are really getting to grips with this as an operator and a significant operator. So it's just wonderful that we're able to work together. I'd like to, Matt Harvey's asked a great question, and I think it's something that's been in a lot of conversations. Katie, we were only talking about this last week. David, from an airport perspective, this is going to have a big impact. I'd like to ask Ian to start with this. If you could talk about what skills in this wholesale change, what skills are going to be needed and what should we do about them?
Okay, thanks, Alistair, and thanks, Matt, for the question. I mean, skills is a very broad subject, and as we kind of look forward, then there's all types of new skill requirements that will need to be developed. The last 12 months, I'm sure we've all had to develop new digital skills and new ways of working, and I think extrapolating going forward, new digital skills, applied artificial intelligence, use of robotics, all of those kind of things are areas that will come to the fore. I know your question specifically was around urban air mobility, and I wasn't too sure what direction you were coming from in that regard. But I would have seen there's new skills required in terms of air traffic management, unmanned air traffic management, urban traffic management. There's new skills required in terms of the social skills and people skills and how we integrate these things into the community. And I think within the region, because of the strengths we've got with the airports, the airlines, the businesses themselves, we've actually got an opportunity to develop skills to meet the demands of business. New Bucks University, for example, very, very strong on airline pilot skills. Cranfield, Cambridge, Oxford, Nottingham universities, we've seen very strong on engineering skills, good, strong schools of management. So I think there's a number of different initiatives around to address specific needs, but maybe Matt, it would be good just to hear what your specific requirements were.
Over to you, Matt.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, perfect. Yeah, just really, I just remember reading many years ago now from the Uber Elevate program when they published their sort of first white paper. But one of the big blocks that they could see in the urban mobility piece was the number of pilots that were needed specifically. And I sort of, obviously vested interest come from that sort of part of the aviation industry of training people. But I can just see that, we're developing now. We've got, it feels to me, and, I follow this stuff quite closely, that we're reaching that critical mass point where these emerging technologies are going to go from being, fantasy to being things that we're going to starting to see happen and being used, hopefully in the UK first. But it just, I know from historically how long it takes to change these things. So at the moment, we're training people to work in a very, very specific industry that all the ground rules were set, 50, 60 years ago. And we've just incrementally changed bits and pieces of that as we've gone along. We're now facing absolutely new technologies. And anyone, as I have, who's had to go at flying a drone, the skills required for that are completely different to those that someone, a fixed wing pilot like myself, would look at. Now there are crossover skills, fantastic, that's great, but there are new skills that are going to be needed. There are new technologies that can be implemented to help with this training. But I'm massively excited by all the amazing things I hear, but just in the back of my mind, I just always have this sort of nagging feeling of sort of where are all the people going to come from? You know, these are jobs, as teachers always say. You know, these are industries we're talking about that are coming, and kids that are in school at the moment haven't even heard of some of these things, let alone making career choices and things about stepping into those industries. So it's just, I don't have the answers to it. I just really, it fascinates me, and it's obviously something that I have a vested interest in. So really sort of happy to hear more about it.
Katie, you're developing Fly Zero at breakneck speed. Thank you very much, Matt. I just wondered how you're coping with the need for new skills in your change.
Yeah, it's been interesting because in Fly Zero we're assembling this fairly large-ish, you know, only 100, so not big compared to a company like Airbus, which is huge, thousands, tens of thousands, but a largest engineering team for 1 year, and so had to effectively compete in the job market to get skills across, you know, all these short to medium range aircraft, and that includes hydrogen fuel cell powered aircraft, hydrogen powered aircraft, gas turbine powered aircraft, and battery electric. So the areas we found really difficult to recruit in were cryogenic systems design. That was really difficult. And people who understand hydrogen behavior, like how the gas behaves and then how it burns, so hydrogen combustion. And we've also found it really difficult to recruit in batteries and electrical powertrain. And the thing is, with these two areas, we're really competing, you know, because the oil and gas sector is beginning to bring on people in hydrogen, you know, hydrogen production. Then automotive and other sectors are looking at batteries and electrical powertrains, and the people that exist are possibly only just at the beginning of their learning as well. They're not necessarily experts, so I think the skills piece is a really interesting challenge. The one thing I'd say is we don't have to necessarily just formulate degree courses, which has a 3 to 6 year pull through time. I think that reskilling existing engineers is a route to responding, and I think we need to do something really fast because other nations seem to have a bigger existing workforce in these areas that we were struggling in.
Thank you very much, and thanks again for the question, Matt. I think there's a whole session we could have on skills, and David, that we haven't touched the airport yet. I just want to move us on to thinking about what kind of support is available and practical steps. When we look at, we hear about, if you stop someone on the street and ask them to name aviation companies, they'll come up with Rolls-Royce, Airbus, Boeing. But we've been talking today and meeting a lot of the entrepreneurs, the small and new companies, Reaction Engines, Samadero, Hero Tech, Zero Avia at Cranfield. And I just wondered if where should people go to gain support, funding, whatever kind of support they need on that journey? Ian.
I think today's been remarkable in introducing people to the very organisations that people should go to, and MAA do a superb job. That things like the KTN network do a remarkable job. I mean, I was really struck by Edward's presentation this morning on Hero Tech 8, and he has worked very closely with Cranfield University, with Liz Bodie and Barclays Eagle Lab, and a really good story on how a small business has started up and grown and interacted with the community, with universities. We heard Liz talked about the Barclays Eagle Lab. Aviate Plus is a new initiative. Nottingham has its initiative. There are many different avenues that you can go in, but I just think this morning's been an exemplar in terms of the organisations you should reach out to and the tools that are available digitally to enable these connections now to be made. I just encourage anybody with an idea to reach out to that network.
Thank you very much, Ian. And I think SEMLEP is is doing its job in bringing everyone together, and is probably the best port of call for any of those introductions going forward. And just another Simon Tosland in the chat. Great questions. We don't have time to pick up everything, and you say that everyone but their dog is using the net zero phrase. Well, I think my dog isn't particularly contributing to carbon reduction, but I just wondered how these big targets, Katie. Well, how are we going to set the big targets, and what's the measurement framework that should be in place?
Wow, that is a hard question. So it's interesting that so what I know, and remember that I have only been working in this field for 3 to 4 months, so Ian might be much better, but there's a European document called Waypoint 2050 produced by a group called ATAG, which seeks to get emissions down below, I'm going to get the year wrong, but you know, pre-2005. So but it doesn't show it going all the way yet to net zero carbon. We think that in order to achieve that, they'll have to and in it, ATAG shows a combination of carbon offsetting measures, which who was it? Sorry, I'm not seeing the chat. Yeah, it was particularly derogatory about, but carbon offsetting measures, efficiency improvements. The aerospace sector thinks they could achieve efficiencies of around 2% per year on existing aircraft through things like more aerodynamic design. Operational improvements could account for kind of 7 to 10% in reduction. And then I'm missing one, whole new aircraft. So that's what FlyZero is looking at with zero carbon powertrains. That has potential to take CO2 if you replace the whole fleet down to zero, but there are other climate change impacts from doing things like burning hydrogen in the atmosphere. So the effect of emitting NOx or contrails still exists. So some work done in Germany and France showed that it could be reduced, so moving to hydrogen, for example, could reduce it from between 60 and 90% the climate change impact. How's it measured? Also really difficult. ICAO does an annual assessment and the IEA of annual emissions. In the UK, what we look at is what's drawn upon from the UK bunkers, if that makes sense. So we have fuel storage bunkers in Britain, and how much do we actually use? And that's where our contribution of kind of 4% comes from. And we're actually quite high as a nation, you know, like flights per capita, emissions per capita is very high, which is, I think, because we're an island nation, so we depend so much upon aviation for trade, for connectivity and travel.
Thank you, Katie. I'm struck by how new this is. And David, the journey that Luton's on, it's unbelievable that you've only been here for 3 months, Katie, making a great impact. And Ian's been here forever. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much for today. We're going to pass over to Andrew Mayer now from Midlands Aerospace Alliance, and the work that you're doing with SMEs and support that you've been able to offer is just is wonderful. And thank you, Andrew. And you're now, I believe, going to take us through the rest of the time that we have together. Many thanks, everybody, for joining, and over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alistair. I won't be taking all the time in the calendar, so there'll be plenty of time afterwards for more Q&A and networking, Alistair, for those that want to do that. So I shall just be 15 minutes or so. So thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me today. What we're getting, as Ian has said, is a variety of viewpoints so that you can triangulate, if you like, where you sit within this aerospace and aviation world if it's less familiar to you. So my viewpoint will be slightly different again. We've heard a great deal about the new aerospace aviation industry. Our background is in the conventional one, and we overlap in our geography with SEMLEP, but we tend to focus on the areas around the West Midlands and the East Midlands up the M1 in our work. The great thing about the Aerospace Up project that Hitendra introduced earlier is that SEMLEP has joined that, and therefore the funding and support we've got available is possible for you to gain across the SEMLEP geography too. And therefore we're connecting our Midlands engine work in a way with your Oxford Cambridge ARC work, and that's terrific to do, because although there are clusters, of course, as Katie mentioned, there are also connections across those clusters as well. So Ian talked about his 5 A's, I think it was, and so we always like to set out as well where we sit with aerospace and aviation. Traditionally, parts of the aerospace world haven't been very well integrated with aviation, and that's true in our work in particular. We focus on design and manufacture of systems for aircraft. We don't make many aircraft in the Midlands anymore, but we do make some high-tech engines and electromechanical systems for them, and we have deep supply chains that I'll come onto as well. If you're interested in other sectors of the industry, as I'll mention in a minute, we have sister organisations in other regions too, which take a slightly different perspective given where they sit. So our focus mostly on the top left, aerospace and civil aerospace especially, but we are also broadening, as everybody is these days, rightly so, into some of the other sectors. We did an event on space last week, and we've got a big and growing interest in aviation around our airports in the Midlands, Birmingham and East Midlands Airport in particular. So what I've shown here at the bottom is really why the aerospace industry has been seen as very attractive for potential new entrants, and it's been its rapid growth in the last 20 years or so until fairly recently. Although the industry's been going through a crisis caused by a Boeing aircraft, the 737 MAX, that I'm sure some of you know had some awful accidents and was taken out of service, is now going back into service. That's the dip on the chart here. We've had the effect of the pandemic as well, as Ian said, has affected our industry particularly badly. We are very much what we might call a long COVID industry, and will suffer for some years, as I'll show you before we get back to our growth. So this is the Midlands Aerospace Alliance, and Alistair, yes, the slides will be available to everybody. As I said earlier, there are other aerospace alliances in other parts of the country. We overlap in SEMLEP with the Farnborough Aerospace Consortium, which does a lot more aviation work than we do because it's got Gatwick and Heathrow in its geographical area. Whole supply chains in the Midlands in particular, from Rolls-Royce down to the metals and some composite materials that are used in the aerospace industry, with everything in between. As a regional cluster body, we're one of the 45 in Europe, and there are others in other parts of the world. So well worth you looking into if you want to connect to customers in other parts of the world as well. In the Midlands, these are our lead companies that I've already hinted at. A lot of the eastern part of the Midlands is dominated by the gas turbine industry, and I don't just mean Derby, I mean Nottingham, Lincoln, Leicester, and down into Coventry and Rugby, and officially in the West Midlands, is the heart of the gas turbine industry in the UK. And that's not just aerospace, of course, it's naval and it's industrial gas turbines at Siemens, for example. And then in the western part of the Midlands, we have the other companies which historically are connected to the automotive industry. Of course, our industry is as old as the car industry, going back to the 1910s. And some of the brands have been the same, the Lucases and Dunlops and so on there, but of course, they're split off for the most part and have become disconnected. We'll come back to cross-sector work in a second. But these electromechanical control systems, whether it's brakes or it's actuation systems for aircraft wings, or it's electronic and electrical control systems, fuel pumps and so on, a lot of what goes on inside an aircraft and makes things move is what we do in the Midlands in particular. Here's a typical supply chain, and our industry is really the sort of top right and a triangle going down to the whole of the bottom in the orange area. The lower tiers of the supply chain in particular is a lot of our focus. If you go across to the southwest Bristol area, they've got more of these tier 1 companies that are green and a fewer of the orange lower tier companies. So the clusters are a little different, as Katie's alluding to. We need to approach them slightly differently. So there's our Midlands map. It's a big industry in the Midlands, one of the bigger clusters, as Pamela said earlier, in the world, and was about 45,000 direct jobs. It's probably now 35,000 direct jobs because of the pandemic and the cuts that many companies had to make, largely at the end of last year when the government announced that it wasn't going to extend the furlough scheme. Our companies made their employees redundant, and the government promptly decided they would extend the furlough scheme. So it hasn't all been easy for many of our companies, and of course our people as well. But if we add in aviation, particularly in Lincolnshire, where I'm speaking to you from, it's about 70,000 jobs. These are the big aircraft for the Midlands. Partly it's the engines on them built by Rolls-Royce, but also a lot of the other systems are from our companies in both of these aircraft, particularly the 787, and smaller activities in the other aircraft. Typhoon coming towards the end of its working life, the A380 less successful than people hoped, but a fair amount of export work from our traditional Rolls suppliers into the engine makers like Pratt & Whitney and into Safran Aero Engines in France as well. So a fair export industry that bypasses Rolls-Royce and to some degree Airbus. So that's a little background on our cluster and the sort of shape and size of it. Very traditionally focused our work, much less work, as Pamela also alluded to, in the new aerospace aviation industry. So it's great to be in the meeting here today where that's more of the focus of the Oxford-Cambridge arc, perhaps. Well, here's a typical consultant's view of the pandemic impact on the airline industry. That's revenue passenger kilometers on the left, and it does go down to zero, this chart. And you can see the projected impact. This is a chart from last year, but it serves just as well to describe what's happening. The worst case scenario, the red here, it's already worse than the worst case scenario here in the months that we're currently in. It doesn't mean that there won't be a fast recovery. So it's quite possible that we'll still get up to the blue asterisk in 2023, but we haven't got back to flying, of course, as people hoped, and our airlines and aviation industry are still really struggling, as are all of us. You all know about this as well as me from the press and our life experiences. The connection that we don't always make, though, back into the aerospace industry out of aviation is this logical chain that we use to explain it to Andy Street as the Mayor of the West Midlands or to our MPs, so they can see the importance of getting people flying again for our industry and our industrial estates in the backwoods of Warwickshire or the Black Country. The effect is direct through this chain. And there will be a recovery when the industry recovers. If we look at the Midlands as a whole, we as a region have been particularly badly affected because of the focus of our output on the big Airbus and Boeing twin-aisle wide-body aircraft that I was showing you earlier. These are the ones that have come out of service fastest because they're the long-haul aircraft for global travel. And they're the ones that will go back into service later. And they're the aircraft that the airlines will postpone purchasing of. So this big red area is basically reflecting spatially our lost revenue as we expected. And we drew this one in April last year. And you know, the aerospace industry is fairly predictable. And we've got no need to change this in the last 13 or 14 months or so, except the green line. We do know that has suffered quite severely with loss of employment. Some companies, maybe 20 or 25% of their employees have been lost. They've had to make redundant in the pandemic. Well, how have we been responding and supporting our members to respond to the crisis? We've talked a lot today about technology and innovation, and I will come back to that. But in the short term, We've been trying to ensure or build up the resilience of our supply chains. This is the plan we put together last July in the depths of the crisis, and it's available on our website. It's still live. We're delivering aspects of it as we speak. Looking after our people, serious issues, of course, that I already mentioned, but the aerospace industry is a fairly safe one to work in versus the food industry, for example, because of the quality conscious systems and mentalities that people have in the industry. So often safer to be in an aerospace factory than anywhere else. And our industry has continued to work. Very few companies actually stopped, apart from for a couple of weeks, 15 months ago. They've just reduced the level of work. Fortunately, we've got people taking apprentices back on. A number of companies have done what a lot of private businesses do in a recession, which is try to improve the average quality of their workforce. That's a euphemism that you'll understand, I think, on the call here. We've been working on new business opportunities for members in other sectors, working with our colleagues in other industries like the rail industry, space. We did an activity on space, last week, as I said, and helping companies to diversify there. Finance is a big issue. It hasn't hit us yet, really, but the expectation is that a lot of the supply chain will be challenged financially when the industry recovers. And that's because of the long supply chains and the long lead times, the very late payments that big companies make in this industry. Companies will have to spend a long time before they get to new revenue in. And we expect those challenges, and we're looking for that kind of support, lobbying for it, that is pay-as-you-grow type of support beyond the pandemic funding that there has been, other kinds of potential financial instruments as well. Resilience, obvious again, a lot of the work we do there is around networking, communicating, making sure people understand what's happening outside their company or a supply chain they're operating in directly. And many of the activities we do are open to any of you, whether you're members or not. We've got some that are restricted to member companies, our members meetings, for example. Even then, we usually operate pay as you go. So come to those meetings. We may charge you, but you're very welcome to do that, even if you're not joining our organization. So that brings me to the innovation work, where I'll join back up with a lot of what we've been talking about today. Longer term challenges include the political economic environment. Of course, Brexit's a big issue still. Our cost base is challenged. Our competitiveness is challenged. Fortunately or unfortunately, the pound rate against the euro will help here. So we're challenged, in the short term with becoming poorer, basically, of course, in aerospace because of Brexit. And the risk is that if we don't sort out the border problems, then companies will stop moving parts backwards and forwards across the channel in the way they've become used to for the last 20 years. We could benefit in some ways, we could suffer in other ways from that. The R&D funding is a big issue for many of our smaller companies. In the last 10 years or so, the focus through the Aerospace Technology Institute has been on big programs and big companies with not much of the funding going through to the small companies, but that's then the space that we operate in. And a lot of that work then is around greener aviation. And a lot of our work is then around how the supply chain can contribute to that and how we can work in our regions and localities, as Katie was mentioning, and with partners like many of those in the meeting today. So the MA's particular niche is different from that of the ATI, for example, or many of the university colleagues who were on the call. We are very interested in working with lower tier companies. Some of them are make to print. Some of them are new entrants with technology-rich companies. Some of them are what we call reactive, agile innovators, very fast to respond to customer needs, much like motorsport companies, for example, and for whom the conventional innovation ecosystem just goes far too slowly. And so they don't bother. It's just not worth it because it takes us so long to respond to them. What we try to do is just be as fast as they are in the work that we do, like the Aerospace Up work. So your funding is approved after a few weeks rather than a few months, for example. programs that we've been involved in, Pamela mentioned these. We have a very strong record here. Apart from Aerospace Valley in France and Aero Montreal in Canada, we're probably the number 3 of the aerospace clusters in the world at doing this kind of work. We have a catalogue of the projects that we've supported illustrated on the right there. The NATEP program was very successful and is taken forward by the ATI and is currently running with the ATI and ADS, our national organisation across the country. Drama has finished. Pivot was mentioned earlier, and that's a cross-sector program that Andy Street's team are funding as a pilot with us. The pilot is about transferring innovation and technology into aerospace. So if you're on the call today, sorry, SEMLEP friends, doesn't include SEMLEP, but that's why we need to build up our combined authorities in other parts of the country, isn't it? To recreate different shaped regions, if you like. So if you're in the West Midlands and you're interested in entering aerospace and aviation, we've got the funding. We run this, the MAA, so you'll be talking to people like Pamela and me about it directly. Workshop on it this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Look at our website for that. And then the Aerospace Unlocking Potential project that Hitendra introduced earlier on. So green aviation is big. It's been mentioned already. 2 or 3% we're responsible for in aviation. More than that in the UK, of course, maybe 7 or 8%, depending on how we measure it, as Katie was mentioning it. A lot of work to make aerospace more efficient. On the bottom left there, but that work is progressing more slowly than the increases in travel across the world. So that's the squeeze that we've got. A number of different areas that we can work on together, different ways of contributing to sustainable or greener aerospace. We prefer greener because we know then we're talking about the environment. Sustainable also means economically sustainable. There's a hidden trick in some sustainability data, as you know, which is the companies want to carry on with business as usual, as well as be sustainable. Like our oil and gas companies, which are going to be green, but they've forgotten about the oil and gas they're producing and have green operations. So the great thing about what aerospace and aviation are doing is they're taking a holistic view and serious about net zero. And the needs for new technology, in particular, new infrastructures, and seeing what we can do to get everybody to contribute to this. And I've mentioned to you what the MAA role is in particular, so certainly invite anybody that wants to make contact with us and work with us. Or if you're in other parts of the country, we can put you in touch with others. So, Alistair, that's me finished. I know that Sam from SEMLEP wants to do a poll at some stage, so we may hand over to her about the meeting, but I'm going to unshare my screen and hand back to you for any questions, discussion, and for closing the meeting off.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for that and for taking us through the smorgasbord of opportunities that there are, and I think it's in everyone's hands to go and partake. So thank you. Are there questions that we should go through? I can't see.
There's been quite a lot in the chat, but I couldn't see any direct questions. But if anybody's got any, now would be a great chance. We have allowed a bit of time at the end, both for questions and anybody else that wants to come in, sort of informal networking, or just come to any of the speakers or panel members or anybody else. Oh, he's just put something in there.
There we go. Sam's communicating with us about the poll. So yeah, let's do that now because people will want to leave, I think, won't they, John and Alistair?
Shortly, yeah. We said we'd be done by 1, so yeah.
Very good, thank you.
We'll be let off. So.
Nobody ever minds getting a little bit of time back in their diary, do they?
No. When we were students, we used to, being a bit irreligious, we talked about them as hours that God had given us when the lecturers didn't show up and we went to have hot chocolate in the restaurant.
Sam, if you can tell us when you're happy that you've got enough results, please, because we won't know. I think only the host sees them.
Feel free to chat amongst yourselves while people are doing this.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. So just wearing my SEMLEP hat, I just wanted to come back in at the end and say thank you ever so much, not only to our speakers and panel members and chairs, but obviously thank you as well to everybody who's given their time today. Very much appreciated. We hope you found it helpful. We hope you found it informative. We've tried to give you, I don't know if I can beat smorgasbord of information. I think Alistair wins for that one, but we tried to make sure that we have a diverse range of topics and speakers. But if there is anything you need, please do come back to us and let us know. We're here to help. How many have you got?
65%.
Okay, well, we'll keep it open for a moment. I think we just had a question pop up as well. Alistair?
Oh, is that one that Ian would be able to pick up?
Is Ian still with us? Just scroll.
It would be an Ian one. I know Rolls has just signed an agreement with one of the companies involved, but again, Ian may know better than that.
Don't think
I am still with you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't see your name, Ian. I apologise.
So, which question are we talking about? The supersonic?
Yeah.
Whether there'll be supersonic returning.
So I posted a LinkedIn on Sunday about the Arian collapse. I think I had the most views I've ever had on a LinkedIn profile, about 55,000 views of it. And in it, I was harking back to, I worked closely on the potential replacement for Concorde aircraft back in, I suppose, the 1990s. And what I've seen is every 10 years that the whole subject of supersonic raises its head again, and we go through another cycle. And to my mind, there's some obvious things. I think we can make the technology work. I think there's always going to be a very small number of people who would be willing to pay to fly supersonic. There's always people who want to fly faster. But to make the business case for supersonic work is just horrendous. And in an environmentally conscious society, the environmental challenges are huge. So my view is there was a certain inevitability that Arian would run out of cash, and that would do it. There are still other companies working it. Boom are still doing something. But my personal belief is it's very, very difficult to make that business case work. And I believe we should be focusing our efforts, our investments on greener technology solutions.
Well, we can all go and fly Concorde at Brooklands.
And Aerospace Bristol, Alistair.
And in Bristol, yes, of course. If we, I suppose the time between them would be about 2 minutes. Well, thank you very much for today.
Paul's put a comment, but I don't think it's a question. I think he's just sharing information, which is great. If anybody else wants to do that, please do. That is absolutely what the session's about. Please don't feel that you're abusing our goodwill. You're welcome to do it. We'll keep the line open. Oh, is that? Sorry, have I missed? Oh, Sam's just said we finished. Right, okay, so the poll's done. Thank you, everybody who joined in there. Paul, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hello all, yes, my name's Paul Kravchik. I'm representing a company called White Knight Service Group today. We historically deal in disaster restoration, dealing with fires and floods for commercial and domestic properties. However, we've also dealt with trauma and accident cleanups in our experience as well. We've also looked at other markets, obviously, over the last 18 months and brought on board a system called SteroMist, which is a misting product that's highly effective against viruses and pathogens. And obviously with the COVID pandemic and moving out of that, the services that we can offer become extremely relevant, we believe, in the transportation sector and in particular aviation. This system has been used in other countries. There's a company in Germany who've used this in certain types of aircraft. So I just wonder if there's anyone on the call who's interested in, health and safety in the respect of viruses, bacteria, and pathogens, and treatment methods within aircraft cabins, and any sort of useful contacts that we could speak to in relation to this service that we can offer.
I think it's great that you're you're here. I wondered if anyone has that particular interest, Paul, whether they could contact you offline.
Yeah.
It's probably quite a big question to ask a large group, but what a wonderful thing to be doing, and what a useful service. So I'm sure there will be people who will be interested. And back to, I suppose, sharing details, actually, if that could happen with your consent through SEMLEP and any follow-up and write-up.
Yes, thank you very much. I've seen John's comment in the chat there, so I'll make a note of his details and go through to him. That's fantastic. Thank you.
John is the arch networker.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Very good. Okay.
So I don't know, we've got about 10 minutes left before we promised we'd be done. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up? Or by all means do what Paul did and put a note up in the chat function. I don't know if you heard me, Sam has sent me a note to say everybody has filled the poll in now, so I've got the results. Positive and a mix. Okay, Sam, do you want to come off mute? I'm trying to read that while it's popping on the screen. What did you just send me?
That was fine. It was just to let you know, feedback very positive. Thank you everyone for filling that in.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
So one final call just before we go, but if there's no other takers, a final thank you from SEMLEP and our fellow partners. That's very kind of you all to give us your time. Hope it's been useful. And everybody else who's coming in, we'll wish you all a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for having us and attending.
Bye. Thanks, Andrew.
Emmanuel, stay with me.
Sure. Thank you all.
Thank you.